History is much weirder than we think. And tonight we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic that has surfaced. And a lot of people have been looking into it. I've seen so many videos you guys have sent me and asked me to get a take on this. And so me and David are going to go through information tonight about the possibility of human farming and the human trafficking that went on in the early 1800s and the rise of the population. The population was very steady for many, many thousands of years, and all of a sudden in the 1800s, we have this huge boom of population. So there could be more to the Cabbage Patch story than we're told. We'll be back tonight.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who is able to make war with him?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. It is my great honor to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn, into the NYSTV studios for another Midnight Ride. Tonight, we are going to be exploring the Little Rascals and the Cabbage Patch Kids. I tell you what, I grew up on this stuff, and I never had a clue to what was really going on. I tell you what, I'm going to really enjoy this, and I think you will too. And you don't have long to wait because it all starts right now, because we're now
Live. What's up, guys? It's good to be here once again in the Puritan Barn. And as always, we are going to bring you something that interests you, and not only interests you, but hopefully leads you in closer to the truth. That's always our goal. And so we thank you guys so much. Let us know where you're from in the chat. Let us know how you're doing in the comments. And we will be right back after a word from our sponsors. Many mainstream companies put dangerous chemicals in their products that contribute to disease and disability. This is why it's so important that we take care in the products that we consume. The skin is the largest organ in your body, and it is the covering to your temple. Our sponsor tonight is Sugar and Spice Soap Company. They create all natural and biblically clean soaps and beauty products. They even have a soap for Midnight Ride listeners. Use coupon code NYSTV to receive 10% off all your purchases. Link in the description. If this is true, then our country is in a lot of trouble.
We would have these trips, these special trips.
But he said, my daddy takes the bodies to the grocery store and he grinds them up and puts it in the hamburger. And nobody ever knows it.
how can kids 6, 8, 10 years old be describing rituals that come from a book like the Book of the Dead? It's hard to get your mind around people being capable of this kind of evil.
All right, thank you guys. And we actually have our links back in the description. Finally, we got our rights to have links. I guess it's not our right, actually.
Woo-hoo!
But we've got them back in the description. So if there's anything you see there that you like, check it out. Also, check out Truth or Fit. This is where this hat comes from. 50% off our Midnight Ride mugs. I don't have one here with me right in this moment. We had so many technical difficulties, I didn't have time for coffee, and that's unfortunate, even though I've been drinking coffee a lot today. But those mugs are 50% off with the coupon code #ToraHead. TORAHHEAD, and you can get 50% off those mugs. So
y'all want to be a tour head,
always, yeah.
And that little mug is great for hot chocolate. I love it because it's got the little spoon and little lid, and just really great for hot chocolate.
Oh yeah, it's awesome, man. It's one of the coolest mugs, and we're not gonna have them for much longer. That's gonna be a special edition that we have. We might bring them out one day, but who knows what the next ones will be. But I really do like those. And David, I know you got some stuff going on this week. Let people know what's going on over at FOJC Radio.
Boy, it's popping over at Ground Zero on FOJC. It really is. And Sunday night, on Sunday Night Live, 8 p.m. Central Time, is the Book of Enoch Scripture. Will be our Sunday Night Live, and you're all welcome to join us for that. It'll be popping.
Yeah, very, very cool. So there's a lot going on, guys. We don't, we feel like the way the world's going, so many things are being revealed. This subject is a really interesting one. I am not 100% sure what to make of it. There have been so many people that have done work on this subject, Mind Unveiled being one of the people who has done a explosive amount of work on this. And so I had a chance to go through all of his content, his book, and look through the stuff that he has. And so by doing that, I was able to kind of take a broad look, and then take a broad look at other things that we know that we've been able to research over time. And I think that if we can bring some of the more valid parts of this research together on the Midnight Ride tonight, with mine and David's areas of study that we've been able to study, adding to and looking at this information, I think we can come up with some very interesting stuff that may lead us closer to the truth of this matter. There's no doubt that there's a slant to history. There's no doubt that there's things been taken out, there's things been added, and there's things that are just straight up fabrications. And so the closer we can get to that, I feel like the closer we have to freedom. Truth brings freedom. Truth will set us free. And so that's where we want to go with that tonight. Do you have anything you want to say tonight before we get going, David?
Well, I was so impressed with the work that Mind Unveiled did on that tremendous job. And that brought back so many memories for me, because I watched this. I grew up in the 50s. Back in the 50s, we had a black and white TV. And we would, there was the window there in the front room, and someone would watch the TV and holler out the window. You'd go out and you turn the TV antenna with your hand, But we were watching the Little Rascals, and I never had a clue to any of these things. It never registered with me. And then even when I become aware of all these things, I never put it together with the Little Rascals. So this was a mind explosion for me, and I am so convinced that there's a real dark underbelly here that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, I think that then not only has it happened then, we're actually seeing a lot of that stuff go on now right underneath our noses, but it's been filed underneath government programs, etc. And tonight we're going to also look at that, but we're also going to show the influence of secret societies on this stuff that we're looking at tonight, and we're going to kind of hone in on one in particular that had much to do with orphans and asylums. And so we're going to, as we continue to look at that, we will. This is kind of one of the things that Mind Unveiled brought out and other people have brought out, and things that I had no idea about. Now, I did know about the orphan trains. As you can see here, this is the train 384 here. This is an orphan train, and they would transport orphans all across the United States to be adopted out to people. I think they said over 200,000 or more orphans were transported by train to be adopted out throughout the United States. I looked into all the adoptions going on, and this was going on from every angle. You have Paris, people trying to adopt French children over into Louisiana and the areas where French purchase was going on so they could have more French people. You have English people trying to have more babies over in America for their people, and you have so much of this going on. You have the slave trade. You have humans being trafficked by the millions during these time periods. It's mind-blowing when you really look at it. This is a baby raffle in Paris, this other slide that you see here. And at the state fair, or the first state fair in Chicago, one of the first state fairs, you had people there that had an exhibit of babies that they had in these chambers that were like wombs, to where they would keep the baby alive, like a baby that's born too early, premature babies. at these fairs. So the baby game was big. I don't know exactly what was going on back then, but we're going to look at it. Now, this film right here, this is called The Cabbage Patch Fairy by a lady named Alice Guy. And this was in 1900. She actually made this in the late 1800s, and this is kind of a video of that. But this is actually this is actually the first motion picture with narrative ever made. This is a Hollywood production, and this is a kind of an advertisement for the orphans that they're trying to pass on to everybody. So we're going to play this real quick. It's really short. There's audio to it. I can play the music, I guess. It's probably old enough that. See this lady just pulling babies out of these cabbages.
Oh, are they real babies?
2 of them are real babies. This last one is either
Oh my goodness.
a dead baby or a fake baby. This last one is.
Man.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
Those babies didn't look too happy with that, you know. I don't know whether we could say no babies were hurt in the making of this film. That was strange.
It was strange. I mean, exceedingly strange. And what I find strange about this whole thing is I looked in this and I'm thinking, of course, you know, we have the plague that happens, right? The plague happens right around this time, the Black Plague. So you have a decrease in population, and then all of a sudden you have this major boom. And this graph that you guys are getting ready to look at is a graph. You can look this graph up. Every graph that shows a similar one, but this one was pretty simple. But you see around the year zero at the bottom lines here on the bottom, these are the representative years. And on the signs, this is billions, how many billions of people there are. So from the year 0 all the way to the 1800s is when you start to see a spike in the population growth of humanity. This is also when the Industrial Revolution is taking place, but you see people go from under 1 billion to currently over, let's say, almost 8-9 billion. So you have this huge spike in population-wise, which is interesting to me. And why are there so many orphans? The idea of a reset has been tossed around, the Tartaria, the mud floods. What do you think about this, David? This is, thinking at it from just different angles. What is up with that?
Well, you just look at all them kids. Where'd all them kids come from?
Yeah.
And in the same time period, Charles Spurgeon started orphanages in London because there was all these kids. Now, in the conspiratorial, like you mentioned, the Tartaria reset, some people theorize that there were many, many people that had knowledge of the Tartaria and that technology. They were just eliminated. A lot of them, we'll be talking about the orphanages, also huge insane asylums, and that these were the children of many of the Tartarian people, and they just would eliminate them, just like the Romanov family was eliminated. So, I can't dismiss that. I can't dismiss it because, man, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah,
a lot of kids.
It really is, man. And I was been researching some stuff lately, and this kind of really ties into it if you really understand the controllers of society and who these people were who were going to all these people. In some civilizations and excuse me, in Ireland, they were called the Tuatha De Danann, and they were these group of people that were long, big, tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people that they thought were gods of sorts, immortals. Maybe some people thought they were just angels that were neutral. They lived around. They moved to the north. They moved underground. They were able to go behind to the other dimension. In other civilizations, they're called titans, and you have these different deities, entities. And what interests me a lot about these, there's always a fertility goddess associated with this. Now, there's a video here that I'm getting ready to play, part of a video by Mine Unveiled that talks a little bit about the fertility goddess and how this all kind of is able to tie in together. But when I was looking at the ones from the Irish one, which is where a lot of the myths and legends come from, even Carthage and stuff, which is even more, they were more civilized at one time than Greece. They in fact controlled the Atlantic Ocean. They would make these maps. We have a book that has the Sea Kings maps, and they would put monsters and stuff to keep people from traveling out too far so that they can control the entire Atlantic Ocean. And they had sway over these people, and so they were able to convince them all kinds of different things. But one thing that I did research, that because Gog, the name Gog kept tying into a lot of this stuff when I was researching it. Some of the gods' names were very close to Ogyges and Og and all of these different names. Now I was looking at Og, and because it kept popping up, and so I was like, okay, Og, what does he have to do with all of this? And there's this show called The Handmaid's Tale, and I don't know if you've heard of this show before.
I've heard of it. Mm-hmm.
Well, the mainstay of this place where they're pumping out babies, like a baby factory, is called Gilead. And so I was looking at Gilead, and Gilead is actually what was changed to where Aga Bashan was actually living at the time. And so these factories of being able to pump out these Tartarian type babies even goes back to Aga Bashan. And now, David, I know you've studied a lot about the heritage of Aga Bashan and the people that claim to be from them. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Og was the last of the remnant of the Rephaim. And by that, many people have theorized, and myself would be in agreement, that later we see down in Gaza, we see the Rephaim. We see them when Joshua goes into the land of Canaan. So what I believe that text means, that he was the last of the Rephaim on the east side of the Jordan, that they split. They saw the handwriting on the wall, so to speak, and they know that they were going to, be waxed. And so they dispersed. And I think at that time we had the Nephilim come to the eastern part of the United States and down into South America, and were instrumental in building a lot of those megalithic places that we see there.
It's interesting because, so you have this idea of Carthage, the Carthaginians controlling all of the Atlantic, and they had this island that they didn't even allow people to go to. I think people weren't allowed beyond the Pillars of Hercules at one time, the Greek and everything. They weren't allowed past it. And there's the theory that because we find all of these Templar crosses, we find all of these idea of these Aryan Indians in America, a lot of people believe the Carthaginians actually were keeping America to themselves, and they were maybe of the tribe of Dan, because you have these serpent mounds and these serpent structures and all these serpentine ideas behind it. And it's interesting, man, because this country is hugely populated in a very short period of time, and also at the same time a huge depopulation was going on at the very same time here. So there's a lot to this.
There really is a lot to consider.
All right, so here we're going to watch this, and David, at any point you want me to pause this and we can comment on this, please do. I'm bringing out this research in hopes that we will be able to add to and be able to look at things in a way that bring light to this situation. So here we go.
Are there any ancient references to any type of repopulation factories? We've made references to this before, but now is the perfect time to dive into the detail on the ancient symbol of Artemis, or Diana of Ephesus. Diana is the Latin name and Artemis Greek. She was essentially the great mother goddess of fertility. Artemis, in classical mythology, is associated with the virgin goddess of the hunt, forest, and animals. But strangely, Ephesus being located in Asia Minor saw a great deal of Oriental influence mixing with the Greek, creating an entirely new symbol. The Ephesians believed both Artemis and Apollo to have been born in a grove called Ortygia, which is also very close to the ancient Greek name for Ireland, Ogygia, the ancient land of forest, which would have been the birthplace of the first repopulation center after the flood of many ancient religious texts. So the Ephesians believed that their gods, the ones that they dedicated their entire lives to worshipping, were themselves born of an ancient grove. But not only that, they put an extra emphasis on the symbol of fertility, depicting their goddess with many breasts, or what looks like eggs, and her legs are held tightly together. In Strabo's geography, he states that, quote, "On the same coast, slightly above the sea, is also Ortygia, which is a magnificent grove of all kinds of trees, of the cypress most of all. There are several temples in the place, some ancient and others built in later times, and in the ancient temples are many ancient wooden images. But in those of later times, there are the works of Scopas, for example, Leto holding a scepter and Ortygia standing beside her with a child in each arm. A general festival is held there annually, and by a certain custom they use via for honor, particularly in the splendor of their banquets there. At that time also, a special college of the Curites holds symposiums and performs certain mystic sacrifices." End quote. Her temple was in the ancient city of Ephesus, a great port city. This temple was one of the 7 wonders of the world and was described as the largest temple or building of antiquity. This ancient structure served as a place for cult worship, with mystical rituals involving sacrifice to this multi-breasted goddess of divine fertility. This temple was not only a religious center, but an economic center. It was an essential bank, as no one dared to steal from a holy place. It was supposedly the largest bank of its time. The temple was rebuilt multiple times throughout history. A variety of different versions were said to have been constructed, as it was destroyed by many different invaders, including Christians who tore it down to remove all pagan remains. These seeding operations were not limited to one location. Yet, many legends refer to this idea of the mother goddess and her children, for many of these histories have been disguised in the form of myth. In Plato's most prized work, Timaeus, he reveals the secret of cycles and resets of advanced civilizations, and that there have been more than one deluge. Quote, "In the first place, you remember a single deluge only, but there were many previous ones. In the next place, you do not know that there formerly dwelt in your land the fairest and noblest race of men which ever lived, and that you and your whole city are descended from a small seed or remnant of them which survived." End quote.
So that's the part that I wanted you to see, David, because I wanted to get your comments on this and this idea of these birthing centers that took place.
Well, talking here about a deluge, and Ortygia is very close to Ogyges. Ogyges, very similar in spelling. And Ogyges was a king in Greece, and during his time there was a flood, the flood of Ogyges, and basically it went up from Greece up to the area of the Caucasus Mountains, right in the area of Tartaria, and then just went. It wasn't a total global flood, but it was huge, well recorded in history, and many historians place it, right after the time of the Exodus, and that is, interestingly enough, tied in with the concept there of Tartaria. And also many people believe that Ogyges took his name from Gog, and this is kind of the way that he saw himself. So it's a fascinating episode there in the tie-ins here with the legend of Ortygia and the people going from there to there. Just a lot of commonalities there that are, very interesting.
I agree, man. It was super interesting to me to really, because I, in order, obviously, on that subject alone, David, you know how it is when you're researching things, you'll go down 50 rabbit trails before you really kind of understand what's going on there. And I did, and there were all the rabbit trails I went on, I don't regret going on, but that one is one that you could go on for a long time. And in fact, I don't, and I want to say this, that I don't endorse all of Mind and Veil's content. There's no way I could. There's a lot of stuff in there that I do not agree with.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to research on a particular subject, you have to see who's done a lot of research on it and kind of look at the stuff that they've done. Chew the meat, spit on the bones when it comes to this kind of thing. So we're going to go to talk a little bit about what was happening to these orphans at the time. I think this is important. So no matter what the theory is, there's a lot of people that have theories. I've heard so many theories, David. There's one theory that I thought was just crazy, interesting, and weird at the same time. But there was a guy talking about how Revelation 20, how this is these people popping up from cabbage patches or from farms is the interpretation of people raising from the dead in their body after the 1,000-year reign. And so they were popping up, these people were popping up, and they are now the people who have risen again after the 1,000-year reign. There's people that have that theory.
Yeah, I probably won't go for that one.
Yeah, there's that theory. And then there's the people that believe that there were cloning farms where they were cloning children. I don't know what to believe, but I do know that these orphans were, in fact, a reality. And there were groups who were taking advantage of the fact that there were unmanned babies being pushed and rushed into the system. And this one is a secret society that we have talked on. In fact, I had the opportunity to baptize a former Grand Master of the Lodge in Colorado, I believe is where he was from. Arizona, maybe. Texas, I'm sorry, Texas. The biggest lodge in Texas, and he became a believer, and we talked a little bit about stuff. We actually did a show with the guy, but this was an organization that I hadn't really studied a whole lot about, but actually plays a huge role in all of this stuff that I really think had a lot to do with how we are as a civilization, the control that we have been gripped underneath. And so I'm just going to read this real quick. You guys can see the pictures here. This one here is one of the Oddfellow lodges, but these lodges were all over the United States, and they put a lot of money and effort into the time when all of these orphans were around into building these things. It says IOOF stands for the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. The organization is an international fellowship based on service to the needy. It was originally established in the United States in the 1800s. For many years devoted significant resources to running orphanages for the children of its members who had lost a parent. So we have this organization named the Oddfellows who is going around building these orphanages. They called them asylums. So not only were they housing orphans, but they also had other asylums for adults too that they could, from what I understand, is reprogramming, like a reprogramming center for some of these people. But these are just some of them. Some of them look like castles. And notice the 3 rings across the bottom here. This is the symbol of the Oddfellows. That's going to come in handy here in a minute once we kind of move through this video. So this is part of the video that we're going to play that talks about film back in that time period and the propaganda being pushed. And also the messages were still portrayed. Even back then, guys, believe it or not, they were portraying messages. They were showing what they were all about, even back then. And Mind Unveiled did what I would call a very detailed study on the Little Rascals. Now, I put together a video of what I thought were some of the most interesting parts of that video. The video's an hour and 40-something minutes. If that's something you want to go to, you can go over to his channel. I think it's one of the first videos that pops up on the channel there, and you can watch all that. I got the most interesting things and the things that I think tie into what is really important to show in the making of this, what they're trying to let us understand. So, David, at any point in this, please feel free to ask me to pause this, and I will do the same if there's something we feel we need to interject.
Yeah, well, the scope of this thing was truly huge. Back in the 1800s, huge orphanages and insane asylums, too. And there were insane asylums that would hold 20 to 50,000 people. They were crazy big. And they had a lot of common things, commonalities. They had graveyards with unmarked graves. Yeah. And children have always been, human trafficking has always been a valuable commodity. And so many of these were shipped out to the West, and back then life was hard and there were so many chores. And kids were good worker bees, and many of them just become like slaves, and many of them met with even worse fates than that, of course. But this was a huge, huge deal. And it all ties in with the way, as always, that the entertainment industry spun it and done the programming for society to accept this as something good.
Yes, and as we're watching this, I want you guys to think about what we're saying about the Oddfellows, and think about an organization that had the means to be able to house a bunch of orphans and indoctrinate them before they're given out to families and before they're spread out to the world. Imagine this while you're watching this, and then see if anything comes to mind.
I thought it would be interesting to consider that in connection with resets and repopulation. why were there so many movies about orphans in the first 30 years of Hollywood? Well, one of the most famous shows ever is The Little Rascals. So The Little Rascals is actually based on a film series called Our Gang, and it wasn't called Little Rascals from what I could tell, it was called Hal Roach's Rascals, which were a series of comedy short films chronicling a group of poor neighborhood children and their adventures, starting in 1922, and the production continued until 1944. Like, who are these kids, and why are they involved in all these weird scenarios? The idea is that these little rascals.
To pause it real quick and talk about something here, you're going to see a lot of goats with the Little Rascals. One of the key ceremonies that is talked about in the Oddfellow handbook is the riding of the goat. David, maybe you could talk a little bit about what that is, the riding of the goat.
Well, the riding of the goat in the Oddfellows and Freemasonry, this goes literally back to Mendez, Egypt, where literally every day at a certain time, one of the priestesses would literally copulate with a goat in front in plain view. It was just crazy. And it's kind of a joke, but it ain't, well, maybe it's a joke, maybe it isn't. But this is the concept of riding the goat, and it ties in also, crazy enough, with Santa Claus. We brought that out with the riding of the goat imagery. But it's dark, it's evil, and it's totally perverse, and all over these Little Rascal episodes. And I never put it together, and it's the goats all over them just go crazy in these episodes.
Yeah.
Rascals are actually street orphans. They are orphans who constantly get in trouble and get moved home from home, and that's why they're little rascals. You little rascals. They can't seem to stay in one place. Not only that, but these street orphans are initiated in a secret society and have secret rituals. I know that sounds crazy, but hang with me. That's essentially what each episode is about, or at least originally. Now keep in mind that as the show progressed into the later seasons, they begin to have families for a longer period of time, but in the beginning of the Our Gang series, there is no question. This is a street gang of orphans, or children who do not have birth parents, or parents at all. This isn't a joke either, it's about to get super weird, and I couldn't even make this up if I wanted to. It's literally in the show. You will see it clearly if we go through some of the most bizarre episodes. It will become clear that there's something not quite right about this whole show. Okay, so let's talk about the 1994 movie for a second. So for me, the acting isn't even close to as good as the original characters from the older show. And think about it, the whole movie is about how this gang doesn't explicitly say orphans, but I do suspect they are even orphans in this newer movie, or the creators are aware that they are street urchins, as look at the outfits of the children in the club other than Spanky and Alfalfa. Not just that, was in the trash can, and Waldo, the rich character, is apparently the best son money can buy, and we get a clip of Donald Trump, who plays his father strangely. The plot of the movie all revolves around these kids who are in a secret society named the He-Man Woman Haters Club. Now I think most people will just say this is a cute kids club or something, but when we start to look into the older episodes on this, it's gonna get weird pretty quick. So no, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. This is a secret society with secret signs, directly correlated with Masonry. It even ends with a secret society including girls, as times are changing, which is exactly what happened in history with the Eastern Stars.
I wanted to pause it here too, because we have another thing happening with co-masonry that's going on as well. David, tell us a little bit about co-masonry and the idea before, who it was only men and then they allowed women into it.
Well, the Order of Eastern Star is the woman's organization for women, but also there is co-masonry, which has a charter off the Grand Orient of France, the Lodge Adroit Humane out of Paris, and men and women both belong to that. Some of the people have been in co-masonry: C.W. Leadbeater, Annie Besant, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, and you could just imagine what they got into. Everything you think might go on, I guarantee it went on and more. And co-masonry is one of the most rabid occult rituals in it of any secret society. And this is exactly what happened. And during this time frame, this is when coal masonry was on the go. Madame Blavatsky, she lived into the early 1900s, right in that period, and then Annie Besant, Leadbeater come on. This was prime time when this was expanding right at that time in Freemasonry.
It's weird because they're like these little prodigies. And that's what I was saying with the new movie, is that the children actors don't even compare to the talent from the original actors. Vaudeville was a theatrical genre of variety entertainment, which was a collection of different acts strung together. There are multiple Little Rascal Follies of episodes that basically revolve around this. Children prodigies performing strange symbolic shows for the sake of entertainment. And this was huge back in the day. They would do this at theaters as a show, or in other words, for money. There's nothing too strange about this episode, but there was this weird thing that I noticed. The girls in one of the play's performances actually sing a very specific song. It's called Honolulu Baby. Well, this song was actually written by Marvin Hatley for the 1933 Laurel and Hardy film Sons of the Desert. Which, look, I don't want to go into a whole different tangent here, but that film is weird. It's basically a comedy movie about secret societies, kind of making a joke of the whole matter while revealing certain things blatantly, such as ancient rites and oaths that must be abided by no matter what. Anyways, in that movie, it's a movie about Shriners. And also, by the way, it was produced by Hal Roach, the mind behind Little Rascals. Well, in Sons of the Desert, they sing this Honolulu song in the exact same fashion. I only noticed this because I watched the movie randomly and that song got stuck in my head, so there's some weird connection or nod going on there, and that song's not a famous song. It was made just for that movie.
David, you got anything when you hear that? Does that bring any bells?
Yeah, these young girls are dressed provocatively, and there's just something not right about that. You just think about that, and it is just like a lot of these ads today. It's the exploitation, and here in the Little Rascals, they were programming people. Well, here's these poor kids. It's okay to make them be celebrities. They're being exposed to things that they shouldn't be exposed to, but that's okay because they don't have any other life. It's okay to exploit these kids. And this happened with Judy Garland, and she was very vocal about a lot of the things happened to her. It happened with Shirley Temple that continued that whole orphan narrative. And who was the champion of that? Disney. Well, yes, all of these kids get trashed. They get into all kinds of immorality, but that's okay because we know if a kid's talented, it's okay to put them in movies. And this goes all the way back to Little Rascals. That's where it began.
Yeah, man. It's interesting for sure. This was like the kind of the playbook. So here we go.
And one more thing too. It helped me understand. I watched all this, and I didn't think a thing about it. That programming worked on me. And this is how, this programming is so subtle. Like today, people are being programmed in so many ways that they don't realize until you figure it out. Wow, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's happening today right in front of our noses, and like it did back then. But now we have access, it seems like, to be able to see it, but for some reason, there's just a spiritual blindness over a lot of people, and we're going to pray. You guys out there, all of us together need to pray over that, in our minds right now, and pray that people with spiritual blindness will come off of their eyes.
Oh, amen.
To understand this, Hal Roach was a huge figure in early Hollywood, and is essentially the creator of the Little Rascals or Our Gang show. They are Hal Roach's Rascals. Well, he would eventually team up with Harold Lloyd, someone who used to be extremely famous, but not too many people know about him anymore. You've probably seen the scene of him hanging from the clock tower. Well, yeah, this guy was a master 33rd degree Freemason and was one of Hal Roach's partners. He's actually in the episode of Our Gang, in fact, so right there's no denying that Freemasonry was somewhat a part of this whole ordeal. Then you have the All for One, One for All club, which has nothing to do with hating girls. It's exclusive to only the guys. And this is the club where they got the secret signs from in the 1994 movie. This All for One club is in the Alfalfa's Aunt episode, which is a very strange Alfalfa episode. It starts with the boys having a club meeting, and we see the same hand pointing icon from the previous Hide and Shriek episode, which in this one is pointing to the secret entrance. And then a goat comes running out, just in case you didn't get what was going on here. Well, they have Phrygian caps or some type of hat wear for this club, and they also have dues or yearly payments to be able to be a part of the club. They have a high sign of brotherhood, and then they do this sign from the movie here as well. For example, the very next episode is called Dual Personalities, where a certain secret is revealed. The whole episode is about hypnotism, and the joke is that hypnotism is actually real. That's essentially the bit in this one. First, we see a man who was hypnotized to become a bridge, but then seemingly by chance, Alfalfa is chosen from a crowd to get hypnotized because he mistakes the word skeptical to mean timid. He then becomes a Three Musketeer or something. But the interesting part about this is that the hypnotist gets hit in the head by a brick that fell from a brick mason. And because this mason dropped a brick and hit the hypnotist, Alfalfa is now stuck in a trance state temporarily, where he truly believes to be a musketeer. You may be like, okay, so what? It's just a joke on hypnotism, not so bad. But you have to think about what we're talking about here. Orphans, children in early Hollywood. And at this time, the Labor Standards Act of 1938 was just enacted, so you think there were any laws against hypnotism? Of course, you can say it's not real, but they're telling you in this episode that it's real. And if it were possible, wouldn't that put a spin on this whole series? Perhaps it explains why these children were young prodigies. The next episode is another common theme that's been done multiple times throughout the history of the series.
Here, so interestingly enough, we've done shows on hypnotism and talked a little bit about that stuff, but this definitely does put a spin on what they're trying to say here. And when he said that, I was like, man, that is so on point with what I believe. This is just my opinion based on what I'm looking at here. Is a lot of these children were used and farmed for a particular reason, for mind control. There's this theory, they call it the farm, right? They call it the farm, about this group of people who are literally raised from the time that they are young, indoctrinated with the skills of assassins, with skills to be doctors, skills to be all of that, but they're all loyal to the original farm. And I think this is exactly where that whole idea, that theory comes from. What do you think, David?
Well, all of the elements of mind control are here. We've got hypnotism. We've talked a lot about mesmerism, which is all the way back to the founding of the Illuminati. And we've got the dual personalities. Every element of mind control is there. And it is just, this just is not, I don't believe in coincidence. And it's right there.
Yeah. So a few more minutes, maybe a minute left of this video, then we'll move on and talk about something else and watch another portion of the video.
Gang discovers that Porky's family can't pay rent, and there's this goat randomly, which you'll actually see in many episodes, especially the earlier ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they put on this circus show to raise money, and they have like all these fake animals that aren't even real animals. There's an older short from the silent film era that has the exact concept where you're going through a strange mansion and you have all these bootleg animals. Then there's the All About Hash episode where we learn about the All for One acting company. So wait, does this mean there are secret societies associated with acting companies?
Better believe it.
Oh yeah.
So this is interesting because it talks about the right before it talks about the acting companies. It talks about oh gosh, I just drew a blank. It talks about the acting companies, but it also talks about the idea of this mind control, or the circus that they created. Interestingly enough, P.T. Barnum was an Oddfellow. Believe it or not, the three-ring circus, three rings on the Oddfellows. So
oh my goodness.
If that doesn't tie in, I don't know what does there.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting in and of
I thought-
itself. I think that, one of the things too, people don't realize the Oddfellows were a pretty influential organization at one time, not so much anymore. These are some of the notable Oddfellows. You have people like Churchill, Chaplin, Franklin Roosevelt, Ulysses Grant. An amazing list, and there's a lot of people nowadays that are still amazing list of these Oddfellows that are a part of this organization. You even see on the Oddfellows site they have people like Pike, Albert Pike, listed as one of the members of this group. And Albert Pike wrote Morals and Dogma of Freemasonry, one of the most, if not the most, influential people in Freemasonry. Believe it or not, David, all the statues that got torn down during this last thing, guess who wants to put that Albert Pike statue back up?
I'd never guess.
Donnie Trump.
Really?
Really? The only Civil War general that was in D.C. is a statue, 33rd Freemason Albert
Now,
Pike.
was he the father of the Little Rascals in that movie?
I don't know. It seems he might be.
You know, that one movie it showed Trump. He was the overseer of the Little Rascals, and a lot of them. Like I noticed the name there, Red Skelton, who was right up here in Vincennes, Indiana, huge back in the 50s in entertainment, and he was a Freemason and an Oddfellow. A lot of people have dual membership.
Even Wyatt Earp there you've got.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we're going to watch the other part of this video. I broke it up into two sections. Of course, like I said, if you want to watch the entire 1 hour and 40-minute video, Mine Unveiled has that video over there for you to watch. But like I said, I broke it down into the most interesting parts and the parts that are relevant to what we were talking about here. So here we go.
The 1919 film is online, and this is where we start to see the connection between orphans and Cabbage Patches. The plot revolves around an orphanage that is about to give up a boy for adoption, but one of the older orphan girls does not want to leave this little boy because she loves him, and so she takes the little orphan boy and they escape. They meet a guy that's on his way to see his aunt at the Cabbage Patch, and so he's like, I'm going to take you back to the orphanage, but first he's got to go to the Cabbage Patch. So once he gets out of the car, the orphans run off and end up finding their way to Miss Wig's house. Well, the cops are looking for these orphans.
Okay,
and the
I
older
got to
son
pause
is
it
like,
here. So
"Please,
you
Mom,
see
can we
that?
keep
Did
him?"
you see that text there? I made sure right here. They shan't take us back to the asylum, Tommy. This is the Cabbage Patch they're talking about. This is the place that they're going to take them before they take them.
So Cabbage Patch is like a metaphor for the asylum.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what it looks
wow.
like, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Looking for these orphans, and the older son is like, please, Ma, can we keep him? And so Miss Wiggs hides the orphans in her home and lies to the police. So she does take in orphans. So yeah, the main character from the 1919 movie is an orphan that comes to help bring growth to the Cabbage Patch. To me, seems super weird. And this is with Margaret Clark, who also played Snow White from 1916. I just wanted to compile all the very weird episodes and symbolic references so that you can see it all at once. Something very strange is going on with this show. But we're still not done. We haven't talked about the silent film era. It would be too much to break it all down, so I'm only going to mention a few of the most insane ones. There are a couple that I'm fairly certain will shock you, and one in particular that most of you will find pretty disturbing, and we can end with that. Interestingly, there's a silent film called The Fourth Alarm, which features Coney Island, and they're feeding medicine to a baby with a worm. They also sleep in a barn with a cross X on the top. Lots of goats in these early silent films. The original for Fourth Alarm was firefighters, which is another common theme where these orphans have to work together to put out fires. Okay, so it's about to get way worse, so hope you're ready. Well, in 1922, there was Young Sherlocks, and they have this scene where there's a secret session of the mystic JJJS. This episode is very occult and unsettling. A group of men kidnap a girl and it's super creepy. They hold her for ransom and the horse or kid saves the day. They even tie this girl up and handle her pretty abruptly. So the kids end up shooting them, saving the day and getting a bunch of money. Then they buy a city and name it Freetown. So this is basically like a reset city. They are repopulating the city with orphans.
Does this ring any bells? Freetown, David. What does that ring a bell to you?
I don't know. Freetown.
Well, it reminds me. So when I look at the idea behind what America was supposed to be, America is supposed to be the new Atlantis,
Oh yeah.
and
yeah.
we have these free and accepted signs on every one of
yeah.
our cities.
Oh yeah.
And this is, in fact, the idea that they repopulated these people into this so-called Freetown. And that's what I was thinking behind that.
Yeah.
Does any of that?
Oh
any of
yeah.
that ring
Ding
true?
ding ding. It's dinging now. Yeah. F&AM. Free and accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when my thought is, in America, of course, we have the history that we've been told, and whether we believe that or not is up to us. I guess we can all look at that and say, this has got to be 100% true. Of course, we believe everything that we hear, or we can believe that parts of this were fabricated. And when we look at this from a scope of what America was founded to be, the book, the New Atlantis, the idea that this may have been what they were calling Atlantis when they controlled the Atlantic and didn't let people come over. This may be the land that it was so succulent, like Atlantis. This may be it, right? And when we think about it, to that means America wasn't started so that necessarily that people could just worship God. It was started for people to be free to do magic, so that because Atlantis in its golden age, according to Plato, they were white magicians, right? They started out white magicians, then they got to be dark magicians, and then they just completely destroyed society, which is exactly where we are right now with America. The white magicians started it off, and if you can believe that they believe that there's such a thing. And then now we have the dark magicians who are running the show, and it's just taken a similar fate of what Plato described happening in Atlantis.
You began the broadcast with the goddess motif. And of course, it's the goddess in New York Harbor that's welcoming in all the poor and all the immigrants. This is great. Come on in.
Yep.
And this is still being sold today, of course, that it's normal not to have borders, and all of just thousands and thousands of millions of people coming in, and they're being exploited. And if I was down there, I'd do the same thing. I'd come up here to get some goodies from Uncle Sugar.
Yeah.
But, there's another phenomenon that is springing up in the border area are unmarked graves. There are graveyards with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of unmarked graves. Just like you could make people disappear, and bury them out there and no one would know. And this was the way it was when you had these huge insane asylums. You just throw someone in an insane asylum, that's it. You're done for. So this is horrible. The human trafficking and the exploitation, it's the same scenario that's being played out now. And it is just unmistakable the way the dots connect, or the way they're executing this and programming people to accept it as normal and good.
Yeah, and it's really caused me to look at the whole Skull and Bones society so much different now than what I used to look at it, because we know that pirates were the original human traffickers. They were the ones who trafficked and trafficked and trafficked. And to know that some of our founding people had a part in this major trafficking that's off the books, and of course we've been sugarcoated what it actually was, but they were a part of that in a major way. It seems like a continuation of the original Masonic pirates that people don't realize were Masonic in nature.
Yeah, absolutely they were.
So anyways, we're going to watch some more of this video. David, let me know if you want me to pause it. Here, let me get it back so you guys can see it. I apologize, earlier part of the video was just David watching the video, but you guys heard it, and you didn't miss a whole lot, so here we go.
Boys to Board and A Pleasant Journey is both about orphan trains. They also mentioned that the wild Indians don't exist anymore, which I thought was weird, some ode to the vanishing Indian myth. In Dogs of War, there's another fake war and dog reference, and Harold Lloyd is filming a movie in this one. There's a scene where a man is strangling a little girl in this one. In Baby Brother, they decide to make their own orphanage. Sundown Limited is the exact same train episode where the black kid gets run over, but this time it's Joe Cobb. Interestingly, there's a short called Lodge Night, which, I'm telling you, it gets pretty bad. The orphans are a part of a secret club called the Cluck Cluck Clams, which is a spoof of the KKK. So yeah, these
So
secret.
you remember the Senator Byrd, right? That was the Ku Klux Klan member.
Oh, yeah.
He's an odd fellow. He was a
Yeah.
notable odd fellow
And a Freemason.
and a Freemason.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
33rd degree Scottish Rite, Southern jurisdiction, and an odd fellow.
Yes, in order to be a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, from what I understand, you can confirm this or whatever, but you had to be a 33rd degree Freemason in order to be a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah, you had to be at least to be a Kleagle in the Stone Mountain, Georgia clan. You had at least be a 32nd degree to be a Kleagle. Absolutely. I mean, it was Masonic run from the top down.
Yep.
It just absolutely was.
Society references go back to the first episodes or films from the silent era. And even in this one, there's an initiation, and if Joe Cobb doesn't show up, he will be killed, or at least they threaten him with that. And we see these skull and crossbones, which suggests that there is some symbolism with the X or crosses. And I thought this was strange, is that there's a separate black club that has the exact same writing as the future clubs with the backward S and the spelling style. This is the Emancipation Hall. And then after the scene, we move to the Royal Temple of the Supreme Cluck Cluck Clams, which is another barn. There's even a shot where we see Exalted Ruler with the handshake sign. Yeah, so this whole secret society, it's not just a club anymore. They have robes and regalia. Pete's even at this ceremony. But yeah, then Joe Cobb shows up and they initiate him into this weird orphan secret club. Also, there are some black children in this KKK club. And one of the leaders is holding a knife and asks if Joe will give up some blood to sign his oath. So what's going on here? It's that, or he has to kiss the royal queen or the Cluck Cluck Clams. Okay, but that episode isn't the only one. I did want to mention the episode The Cobbler, which is another orphanage where the owner is waiting to get a back pension again. So that's from the early silent film era. But to me, the most bizarre and disturbing episode of them all is called Tired Businessmen. There isn't really any details on the summary, which isn't common, but I'm telling you, this is the craziest episode I've seen, and it explains the meaning of Pete. So just a warning, this one's pretty shocking. We learn about a Manhattan club, and there's the goat again. They're going through initiations, and they're about to initiate Joe Cobb. But this is where it gets crazy. This initiation begins, and Joe has to shake hands with this bizarre demon statue with horns. They call this thing King Kazukas. Wait, hold up. Why do they have to shake hands with this scary thing? It's definitely some type of demon. And look at the wall. There's a skull and crossbones with a swastika. Where would orphans learn such a thing? So what they do is they spin Joe around and then they spank his butt. Remember the paddle from earlier? What's even going on? I couldn't believe it when I was watching it. They even electrocute Joe, or the chubby kid, and then guess what they do? They paint a black circle around his eye. Then it says, "I'm a member now." The black circle is the same black circle that's on Pete. So this is what it means? An orphan that's been initiated into a secret club. An orphan that has shaked hands with a demon and then been spanked? This is literally a humiliation ritual where they throw eggs at Joe's face. Then after the initiation is done, they threaten to chop off his appendix if he ever speaks about what happened during the ritual. Bro, this is not for kids. So he has to keep silent or all of this a secret? Then he pretends to be a cop. Apparently his father's off somewhere because he's not home, and so Joe pretends to be a cop to scare the other orphans, and they believe it.
Does any of this stuff that we just watched in this last segment, David, ring off any bells of Masonic ritual and such?
It is 100% Masonic ritual. This is written by Mr. Roach. It's written and produced by Freemasons and for a purpose. The lesson is poor kids can be put into, if they have talent, they can be entertainers, exploited, treated like adults. It's okay if you initiate a poor kid into a secret society. That's good, because they have nothing. They don't have anything, no place to live. They're just little rascals. So anything's a step up for them. You're being good to them when you do that. It is just really amazing that we have this whole thing here. This laid the whole groundwork. What Disney did, and he began, right in this time period in the 40s, is just a continuation of this narrative. It's the same thing.
The ritual of shaking the hand of the demon, is there anything specific to that makes sense to you?
Well, and it's much like the Mormon temple ritual, and in the Mormon temple ritual, you reach through the curtain and you actually grab hold, I think it's like someone's belly. And it is just totally weird, and the hand is such a big thing in all kinds of magic rituals, and it's crazy.
Have you heard anything in your studies of the occult about the Black Eye Club and what that is meant to even mean? Is that something that's common written about, or is that something that's kind of more hidden? Because you've seen this different people with the black eyes, and people are tying this to a Black Eye Club. And I realize people get black eyes. I've had black eyes before. I get them every now and then. But is there something to that whole idea of the black eye, the circling of the eye?
Well, and a lot of that, people think it goes back to the idol shepherd prophecies in Zechariah, of the eye being darkened, and we see so much of this. You've showed montages of this, of all the celebrities that are doing the eye and the wink thing. And yeah, it is, this is just amazing. It is just really amazing, all that they packed into this. Just blatant ritualistic Masonic programming.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that I've watched the Little Rascals when I was a child. There was a video store I lived down in a border town, and they had the free videos were all like Little Rascals, Laurel and Hardy. So all of these shows were what I watched all the time as a kid. Never once did I realize or look at any of that stuff and think, oh, this is some kind of program. This is some kind of story somebody's trying to tell. But looking at it now, with these eyes here, to me it is clear, like you said, it is clear that these children were used for a dark working of some particular sort, and that they were inducted into a organization that was meant to control the world. And I don't know the extent of all of this stuff. There's probably so much more that we don't understand about this particular subject. But when I see stuff like that, and I see the idea, and there's another thing that brought to my thought about the eye thing too, David. Remember when there was a tribe of Israel that, I think it was the Ammonites, had pretty much humiliated, and they told the leader of Israel, they said, if you don't, I think it was Saul, if we're going to cut out the right eye of every single one of these people, this tribe here, if you don't do something about it. And they were going to do that. And I always thought about that as like, this is a sign maybe that we've taken over your people type thing. And I don't know if that's a way to look at it, but like the idea of the darkened eye, it could be also a sign of the enemy has taken the people over, and there's nothing you can do about it type thing.
Yeah, domination. Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of these rituals that they had on here too, I noticed that were the kids wearing dresses, like a humiliation ritual. After Alfalfa had left the series and Froggy was kind of the new leader, he underwent in one of the episodes, and you probably remember seeing it, he underwent a humiliation ritual where he had to wear a dress.
Yeah.
And then he was buried and all of this different stuff, and he became the leader of the He-Man Woman Haters Club. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah, and after Alfalfa transformed into a woman, all the guys wanted him, or whatever. It's just nuts. And
yeah. When I look at this subject, I look at it and I think, I've studied history a lot and through my time, and that was one of the interesting subjects. Even in high school, when I really didn't care much about studying a whole lot, that was a subject that always interested me. And when I found out that the history that I thought I knew was probably fabricated, and that there were a lot of holes in the way I believed that the world to be, it was really hard to imagine that to be true. And we all kind of get this cognitive dissonance that we get when we hear new things that kind of disrupt the way we've thought of the world. And so if you're feeling that tonight, I get it. We've all been there. But we have to remember that if a foundation is messed up, it's okay to start over. Starting over is a good thing sometimes because we can build something better in return from the foundation that we had that wasn't shaky or cracky. And so with that being said, with all of the stuff that we presented tonight, I believe that there is a true foundation of truth. And the reason that I even do these kind of shows is to give glory to the creator of the universe, the creator God, that who has written a book through hundreds of years. It was written 66 books put together as God's word. I believe that this is what the creator wanted us to find for him as truth, and that we can actually find what it is about history that we're looking for. And we know in history, through looking at the Bible, that there has been genetic manipulation. We know this for a fact. We saw it in Genesis 6. We saw the whole world being judged because of it. Post-flood, we saw that the Rephaim, the Nephilim, were still around, and that there are still kingships that claim lineage to these ancient Nephilim kings. We know that there is genetic manipulation going on right now in 2024 in America, all over the world. We know that this is a thing. We know that this is what it was like at the time of Noah. And the scripture tells us, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. So don't think that this stuff is not still going on. This still goes on through foster homes all across the United States, government ran, government owned. And this is a real reality that children today are facing in a very major way. So we need to be in prayer for that. And, there's often times when I've been thinking, man, it would be great to be able to do something, get an orphanage together and teach these children the right way. Unfortunately, the enemy has plans and the enemy has funds, and this is exactly what they've done, but they've taught the children the opposite way. And so we need to do everything we can to help the orphans, to help the widows, to help the people that are easily manipulated, easily transformed into being something that the evil powers want them to be. And so I ask all of you that are here tonight to, if you haven't seek God, seek God. The Bible says if you seek him, you will find him. And I urge you to do that, urge you to find salvation, find forgiveness in Jesus and his sacrifice that he's given us, because it's changed my life. It's changed my life in a major way, and I can't help but say it. The difference between me and David and other creators that do this stuff on YouTube and different places is that we want to spread a message that is not necessarily going to benefit us in a financial way or any way like that, but we want to tell the truth. Now, society has offered so many riches to people who just put up content that is nothing, that it doesn't matter. We can just put up content. But when we choose to do this, we choose to be enemies of the world. And know this, that if you choose this path, if you take the red pill, so to speak, that you will become an enemy of this system. And the Bible says that an enemy of the world is a friend of God, right? It says that anybody who is a friend of the world is an enemy of God. And so it goes Amen. The other way around as well. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to this. David, do you have any final words before we end this episode?
Well, the scripture that comes to my mind is knowledge increaseth sorrow. We thought this was the safe stuff, Yeah, let's, the little rascals, this is safe. This is wholesome. Wow. And the bottom line is you can trust Jesus. You can trust the word of God. And beyond that, there's just not much out there. Yeah. It is the only sure foundation and the anchor of our soul that we have. Hollywood is so corrupt, and it always has been. Yeah. It always has been. But like John said, that's the goal of the Midnight Ride. Turn to Jesus, the real one, before it's too late.
That's right, guys. And so, like I said, make sure you hit the subscribe. If you're not subscribed, you're going to miss this every single week we do this. We put out content that we feel that is valid and important for everybody to see so that we're not deceived. The truth will keep us from being deceived. So make sure you subscribe. We do this thing we call the Pounders Pound. And that is where we pound the like button together at the same time on the count of 3. David, count us down. Let's do this.
1, 2, 3. Boom!
Boom. I felt that over here, man. That was good. You guys, thank you so much for listening. David, end us out.
Once again, I tell you, this is a mind blower for me. And as always, we're just so thankful for all of you that watch and support the Midnight Ride. Couldn't do it without you. And until next Saturday night, 10 p.m. Central, high five and good night, everybody, from the Midnight Ride.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up.